Hey, we're super excited to continue the series, Faith Outside the Box, where you get a chance to hear stories from our own Eden teachers. And today we have the legend, Mr. Luke Landry. So let's give it up for Luke. Well, hey, as we dive into stories or questions about faith story, maybe start off as we've done just with how you kind of arrived at Eden High School. How did you, that part of the journey that brought you here to us?
Okay, my journey was a bit winding. Now, I don't hold this against me, but I went to Catholic high school. So I originally thought I was going to teach at a Catholic high school, but I actually got a job offer at Lakeport, which is a school that used to be here, which is no longer here. And so I got a job here at Lakeport when Eden was kind of on top, in the top floor, and right, so you got the heathens on the bottom, and anyways, and so, so I was a super small department, so and Eden's science department was a little bit bigger, and so Mr. Franz and some Mr. Thompson and some other teachers, they were really welcoming to me, and so that was my first introduction to Eden. But as Lakeport grew smaller, I decided to kind of leave for a bit, so I went to collegiate. And then when an opportunity opened up to kind of for Eden again, after I'd kind of, done some other things, I decided to come back. And cool. Yeah, it was good.
And about 10 years, 10, 11 years?
It's hard to say because I was split between collegiate and Eden. So it might be more like 13 or 14 years, okay. But only 10 years full time here.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no, we're glad you're here for sure. Appreciate so much of what you do beyond the classroom. But share with us just your faith journey in terms of just coming to faith in Christ. Tell us that part of your story where you met Jesus.
Okay. So I grew up Catholic, but it was very nominal. I went to church every once in a while, Easter, Christmas. It was very, it wasn't really a part of my life. I was actually in grade 9 or 10. I would say that I was an atheist, or at least agnostic. No, I was probably atheist. Okay. I got in arguments with my religion teacher about evolution and things like that in class. I was the only person who thought evolution was okay at that point. We can have that discussion another time. Sure. A friend of mine just randomly said, "Oh, I'm going to this camping thing with my church," and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." He's like, "And a friend of mine was going, but they canceled, and we have an extra spot. Do you want to come?" I'm like, "Okay," and I had no idea what I was getting into, zero idea. So I go to it's called Pitch and Praise, and so I went to Pitch and Praise. And the church was Bethany. And so I got there, and I have zero clue, right? I kind of grew up in a church background, but I didn't have quite the same understanding of how that was going to work. So I got there, and I remember the youth leader saying, "Oh, everybody make sure that you have your Bible." And I'm super cool high school student. I looked to the guy next to me who I didn't know. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, we got our Bible." Now, obviously, I didn't have a Bible, and obviously, he did have a Bible, and so that was a very awkward moment where we're both kind of "Oh, this is." So it was kind of different, and so we went to the large chapels, and I just recognized that there was something quite a bit different about the experience that these teens that I was just meeting, these guys that I was just meeting, there was a much different experience that they were encountering God than I had ever encountered before. And so what happened was I just went the whole weekend, and you have that, everybody put your head down, and if anybody wants to make a commitment, do you want that? And so at that moment, I just felt a big sense of belonging that I hadn't felt before, especially in a church setting. And there was a lot of things that I had to grow and figure out from that point on. I don't have this and then I went on a mission trip the next week, and I don't have any of that. I have a lot of I swore a lot, and I really didn't have, I had a lot of like family issues still. Like none of that stuff disappeared for me, but at least at that point I had community, and I had, and I really felt God's love for me for like the first time ever.
Wow.
So anyways, so I made a whole bunch of new friends. They all went to church. They all like were really excited about like singing songs at church and like listening to what the guy up there was saying. Like up until that point, like I would go to mass once a month at school, and that was just like a time to like get out of class. Sure. Like that's all that was. It was like, oh, good, we have an afternoon off. That was my experience with church up until that point. And then all of a sudden, I was surrounded by people who really took this seriously. So
yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that part of the story actually, so that's really awesome. How does faith influence you in your role as a teacher? Like, where do you see faith kind of, influence what you do as a teacher?
I guess I just try to care about the kids in front of me. I don't know, like that's kind of, I don't know if that works out so well all the time. I think that they know that I care about them. I think I try to treat them with respect. And even at collegiate, when I would have students of different faith backgrounds, I think that they definitely knew that I respected them. They felt comfortable coming and talking to me about things. And there was even one time when they had wanted to kind of run a week of kind of information sessions about their faith, and they asked me how to like advertise for it, and I'm like, well, yeah. So I'm open to helping, and I'm open to like knowing what's going on in their lives. Like I think that I try to go out of my way to be there for them and to show that I'm on their side. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. I can't really talk about faith all that much, sure. Right? It's not really a thing, but I also try to, one thing that I struggled with as a kid, and as like going to university for biotechnology, and right, trying to like have faith, and having different ideas about maybe, Genesis, perhaps, okay. Right? Like, so, just trying to, like, when kids do ask me and their question, and kids who are Christians, and like, how do I interpret, or how do I go about rectifying, those things? I try to be honest with them and give them like at least a framework of how to reconcile the two camps, right? Like of asking questions and not being afraid of the answers to those questions, and recognizing that that believing in science isn't a make or break thing. Right. You can believe in like the natural revelation, and you don't. It doesn't mean that doesn't mean the revelation of the Bible is like you have to throw all that out. You can reconcile them. It's okay. You can do it. I promise.
Yeah. I appreciate your service and obviously the way you serve and try to make connections too. It speaks volumes. If you think about the pandemic, the last couple of years, or different parts of your journey along the way, any moments where they were just definitive God moments, where God has just really showed up in your life and you've really sensed His presence?
I think it's when my family. I think there was a picture of my kids and my wife when they have been sick. Because when they have gotten sick, it's been very acute. And by that I mean it's not like a long-term sickness. It has been like really immediate, okay, and really dire, like in the moment, right? Like, so there was one time when Noah got very sick to the point where he was at the general one day and at sick kids the next. Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah.
I always get a bit emotional about this. But.
Yeah, take your time, Luke, man.
But in that moment, I really felt God's presence in my life, that he was going to be there for me, and gave my wife, Jen, and I strength. And it was really crappy. Like, it was not a good moment. It's funny, I talk about it in class sometimes when we talk about goggles, because it was an eye thing. And I make a joke about it, that nobody in St. Catharines, like no ophthalmologist will come see you in St. Catharines. You have to go to like Toronto. And I kind of make a little bit light of it. Like, how do I know this? Well, because that actually happened, where we needed somebody and they wouldn't come. Okay. And so it was really like a blessing, right? Like, things worked out. Like, we prayed and we had trusted, and it did work out in the end. And I just felt like just being encompassed and loved and protected. And I mean, it might not have worked out the way it did, not luckily, but it did work out. It worked out okay. But it was really one of those moments where I felt that presence. Now, that with the pandemic, I feel like, because one of the questions that on your list of questions was like, when have you felt like your faith challenged? And I feel like the last 3 years have been, in some ways, have been really great in terms of like, right, like a lot of chance to listen to like podcasts and read and do all those kinds of things that would help feed my faith. But the not going to church and how easy it has been to just kind of like get out of those rhythms, that has been really difficult to maintain like that faith connection. So I think this has been like, over the last couple of years, has probably been my most difficult. And I don't know that difficult's the word, but just where like this kind of malaise is set in, where you're just like, kind of like, okay, whatever, I don't have to. We've all been encouraged to stay away from people, right? It's very easy to just become by yourself. Yeah. And I'm not really good at by myself, right? So, but I've let it happen. And so, I think that's, it feels like I can trust in God in those immediate moments, right? Those very but I find myself when it getting lulled, right? Lulled into a sense of complacency. And that's what I feel like the last couple of years have been, is just complacency.
So your need for community, like you've talked about that. Along the way, has there been a specific person that maybe God has used in your life to really spur you on at a point?
My wife, for sure. For like lots of different things. Just that she grew up with a very a strong faith background, and so like I talked about when Noah was sick, like she really led the charge there on the on trusting. Okay. Which, yeah. Also, I have a really good friend. His name is Bill Hauser, and he's a teacher at Sir Winston. And it's funny how we've known each other since that first weekend. He wasn't there, but he was too cool for that. So I met him the next weekend at a car wash or something. You know what I mean? The youth raise money for whatever. Anyways, so then we kind of were peripheral friends for a very long time, and then it just kind of a slow build.
That's cool. We got a couple minutes left. If you could share a message with this generation just about faith, life, spurring them on, what would you say, Luke? What would be your message?
I think that we can easily start doing a lot of things that seem like they matter in the moment, but they're just a way of just kind of taking up space and taking up time, and maybe they're not really all that important. I feel like, now this is from my own perspective, because I'm a dad and I have kids and I run them around all the time. So from where I'm looking, I just fill up my time with a lot of stuff that maybe at the end might not have been that important. Not that, like, loving my kids and working towards them doing really great things. But I think you need to make time for, and be very deliberate about it, because you can easily just kind of like not do things that are right, like kingdom work. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, just like things that are just, they seem great, like they seem like worthwhile things to do, but they might not be anchored in anything. And so, like, the reasons that I do things sometimes aren't all that pure. And so I wish that I spent more time thinking about doing things that were more focused on God, because you can easily just like, there's so much noise. And if you aren't deliberate about it, then it's easy to fall into complacency and just doing homework and going to sports and dance and all those things that you can easily fill up your time. And then at the end, you're like, well, was that really a value? And I'm not saying that sports or dance or schoolwork isn't a value, but sometimes it can feel a bit empty at the end of it all. Like, wow, yeah, I worked really hard for that whatever mark. It's like, and there's never enough. You can always get 1 more % or whatever, right? Or you can always go to one more tournament. And was that really the make or break?
Yeah. I love that challenge of just making sort of kingdom priority in terms of just the pieces in our lives and creating space for that. Yeah, I love it. We got to wrap up. Certainly could continue the conversation for sure, but I wanted to say thank you to Mr. Landry. You could give a hand for them. It'd be awesome. Thank you, Luke. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys, for coming.
Today, junior boys meeting in the SLC for the Foundry. Sign up for Celebrate You for a pizza lunch if you have not done that, and we hope you have an awesome day. God bless. Thanks for coming.